Hello, guys. It is Storytime Saturday, which means every Saturday we will read you one to two
Yep.
or maybe three stories, depending on how much time we have. Today,
Mm-hmm.
how many stories do you want to read?
Whatever,
Two?
however you want to do.
Okay, the first story we're reading is the Aristocats. I didn't really watch the show, so I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it. And it is called The Birthday Wish. This is the first picture. I like doing this because it makes me feel like a teacher, and I don't know why I like feeling like a teacher.
Yeah.
It's just something I really like. Good night, my loves, Duchess said. Her tail swished softly as she gave each of her kittens, Burlos, Tulis, and Mary, a tender nuzzle. Sleep tight, kiddos, O'Malley said as he tucked them in. Berlioz and Tulis purred happily, but Mary didn't want to go to bed. Please, may I go to the party tonight? She asked. I promise to be very good. Duchess smiled and shook her head. Scat Cat will have other birthday parties you can go to when you're older. For now, you need a good night's sleep. Duchess and O'Malley left and shut the door quietly behind them. Mary listened as Burles began to snore softly. Then Tulis's whiskers began twitching. Soon both of her brothers were fast asleep, but Mary was wide awake. Voices drifted from downstairs, then music. Duchess and O'Malley and O.
Pause it for a minute.
Okay. Sorry, we had to pause for a second, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
start reading again. Voices drifted from downstairs, then music. Duchess and O'Malley were throwing a birthday party for their friend Scat Cat. He was a jazz musician who helped Duchess and the kittens when they were separated from their owner. Mary sighed. Oh, how she wished that she were allowed to join them. Why, Scat Cat was her friend too. It wasn't fair. After all, Mary could laugh and dance and sing as well as any grown up.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, Mary thought. She could sneak into the party if she looked like an adult. Tiptoeing carefully, she made her way downstairs. The coat closet would be full of things she could use to disguise herself. The noise from the ballroom became louder as Mary slipped into the dark closet. She rummaged around, trying to try things on. The feather bow tickled her nose. The frilly bonnet wasn't glamorous enough for a party. The dark glasses made it impossible for Mary to see anything. Finally, she found the perfect disguise. Mary thought she looked very grown up. This is her disguise, and these are all the disguises she tried. Mary crept into the parlor and looked around. Scat Cat was leading the band in a fast-paced jazz number. Duchess and O'Malley were chatting with some cats in the corner, but most of the cats were dancing. They danced on the floor, on the tables, and there was even a cat swinging from the chandelier. Mary wanted to dance too, but I have to stay quiet, she reminded herself. I mustn't get caught. This is a beautiful house, someone said. Mary turned around to see a lady cat wearing a sparkling collar. She was talking to Mary. Thank you, Mary said. Then she slapped a paw over her mouth. She is in disguise as a guest. No one could know this was her house. I mean, Mary added, I think so too. This is her with the cat with the sparkly collar. And this is everyone being chaotic at the party. The lady cat gave Marie a funny look. Marie decided to change the subject fast. I like your collar, she said. I like your hat, the cat said. Mary beamed. It was working. Her disguise was perfect. Nearby, a cat in an apron appeared carrying a large platter. Who wants tuna ice cream? He said. I do, I do. Mary raised her hand and jumped up and down, then she remembered. She was supposed to act like a grown-up tonight. The apron cat handed her a bowl. Thank you so very much, young fellow. Mary said in her best adult voice. As she tasted the ice cream, she purred loudly. Tuna was her favorite. Later, some of the guests played party games. Mary enjoyed the charades, but Pin the Tail on the Doggy was her favorite. She won every round. As Mary removed her blindfold, the band started playing a new tune. Scat Cat put his trumpet down. You're on your own, fellas, he said to the band. This birthday cat has got a date with the dance floor. Scat Cat walked over to Mary. Ma'am, he said with a wink, may I have this dance? Oh wait, there's her playing. Oh no, there's her playing pin the tail on the dog. Mary forgot all about getting in trouble. She put her little paw in his, and Scat Cat led her down to the dance floor. Enjoying the party, Mary? Scat Cat asked. Oh yes, Mary replied. Then she gasped. I mean, who's Mary? She asked, trying to cover up her mistake. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me, Scat Cat said. Let's just dance. The music swelled, and Mary took Scat Cat's advice. She swayed, bopped, and jumped to the beat. Then, as the piano trilled, Scat Cat spun her around like a top. Mary whirled, and her disguise went flying off. They're the parents. They look really surprised. Mary! The music stopped, and everyone stared. Mary's disguise was gone, and her mother marching right towards her. Young lady, you are supposed to be in bed, Duchess said. Mary looked up sadly. I'm sorry, Mama, she said. I didn't mean to disappoint you. Mary felt terrible for making her mother angry. Hey now, said a rumbly voice. Mary looked up. It was Scat Cat. Say, Duchess, it is my birthday, and Mary's my friend. How about letting her stay? Scat Cat leaned over toward the birthday cake on the table. It's my birthday wish, he said, then blew out all the candles and winked at Marie. Marie or Mary? Mary. She smiled back. Duchess said, looking closely at Mary and Scat Cat, well, just this once, I suppose. But you are going to bed early tomorrow night, Mary. Understand? Mary nodded happily. Thank you, Mama. I promise I'll never sneak out again. There's Scat Cat blowing out all the candles. Then there's her holding her and telling her that she's going to bed early tomorrow since she snuck out. So Mary stayed at the party, singing and dancing, talking with the grown-ups. Finally, it was time for everyone to go home. Mary was sleepy as she had ever been. As Duchess carried her up to bed, Mary heard Scat Cat call, Thanks for coming to my party, Mary. Happy birthday, Scat Cat, Mary called back. Thank you for the dance. Mary could not stop smiling as Duchess tucked her back into bed with her brothers. She would never forget her special night and Scat Cat's birthday wish. If there are any other stories that you want us to read, just comment them. But we're going to find another story for us to read to you. This next story is a Disney princess story. It is The Princess and the Frog, a new chef in town. Tiana dipped a spoon into a pot of bubbling stew. She thought as she took a taste, just enough spice. She made a note in her secret recipe book. She was working on a brand new dish at her restaurant. The restaurant was always packed with people who came from near and far to try Tiana's food, especially her gumbo. Tiana hung her apron on its hook. Time to greet the customer, she announced as she exited the kitchen. Tiana went from table to table, saying hello and making sure everyone was happy. Eventually, she arrived at a table where a man was sitting alone. Are you enjoying your meal today? She asked the man. The man glanced up. The ogre was satisfactory. The rice was interesting, and the gumbo was disappointing, he told her. Disappointing? Tiana wondered in surprise. Her gumbo was her best-selling dish. There's the man who said the gumbo was disappointing. Then there's her walking out of the room. I don't know what it is called. I forgot what it is called, but you guys know what I mean, I'm pretty sure. Kind of reminds me of Ratatouille. Tiana walked over to where her friend Charlotte was sitting. She told Charlotte what the man had said. Oh, Tia, Charlotte cooed. That's Leon Rober. He told me he is one of the most famous chefs in the world. I saw him here last week, too. He just opened a restaurant in town, and oh, you must try this gumbo. It's divine. Tiana looked back at Leon. He was happily eating some baguettes when he saw Tiana. He frowned and put down the baguettes. Baguettes. We're just going to call them baguettes because I forgot, because I don't know how to say that. The next day, the whole town seemed to be buzzing with excitement about Leon's new restaurant, and Tiana kept hearing about the gumbo of his. She decided that she had to try it. That night, she and Yvonne went to Leon's restaurant. Now, let's see what all the fuss is about, Maven said when 2 beautiful bowls of gumbo arrived at the table. There's town. There's Tiana and her friend Charlotte. I recognize Charlotte, but I don't know where she was in the movie. Tiana took a bite. Her brow furrowed. She took another bite. Her eyes widened. She took a third bite. "Wow, this is almost as good as yours," Naveen said excitedly as she scarfed down the gumbo. "Naveen," Tiana said calmly, "this isn't almost as good as mine. It is mine." Naveen looked up confused. "The veggies, the spices, even the sausage, the way the sausage is cut, it's all the exact same. Leon copied my recipe," Tiana whispered to him so no one else could hear. She had to say something to Leon. She decided she would simply tell him she knew he had used her family recipe. She was sure he would apologize and stop what he was doing. But Leon did not apologize. "Are you calling me a thief?" he yelled when Tiana confronted him the next day. "I would never use a chef's recipe, especially not a bad recipe." Tiana was shocked. What would she do now? Then she had an idea. "Okay," she began. "If you didn't take my recipe, then prove it. I challenge you to a gumbo cook-off tomorrow at noon. No cookbooks or recipes." Leon paused for a moment. Then he puffed out his chest and said, "Fine. We will cook at my restaurant." That night, Tiana could barely sleep. Word had gotten out about the cook-off. Lots of people would be at Leon's restaurant. What if he hadn't taken her recipe after all? What if the gumbo was really better than hers? What if people stopped coming to her restaurant? Her mind raced with questions. The next day, a huge crowd gathered at the restaurant. In the kitchen, Tiana and Leon faced off. Tiana noticed how tired Leon looked. He must not have slept well either. Tiana dashed about the kitchen, grabbing ingredients. She asked Leon where the peppers were, but he didn't answer her. She couldn't find a good ladle either. Then, as she was rushing to the stove, Tiana nearly slipped on some water on the floor. "Daddy would have told me to take my time," she thought. With renewed confidence, she sprinkled some thyme into her pot. Meanwhile, Leon was having trouble of his own, but Tiana didn't know that. She noticed when he glanced over to see how many stalks of celery she was using. She hadn't noticed when he used vinegar instead of oil, and she hadn't noticed when he poured twice as much salt into the pot than he was supposed to. Tiana put the finishing touches on her gumbo. She tasted it. She thought it was good, but was it enough to beat Leon? The two chefs handed out bowls of gumbo to the hungry people who had gathered. Then Tiana watched as one person tasted her gumbo, and a slow smile spread across his face. She saw another person do the same, and another, and then she noticed something peculiar. Someone else was spitting out Leon's gumbo. Another person looked green in the face, and another person drank an entire glass of water after one bite. What was going on? That shows. "Leon, may I try your gumbo?" Tiana asked the chef. Leon hesitated. Well, if you must," he managed to say, handing her a bowl. Tiana took a bite and nearly gagged. "I'm sorry," she said, "but what is this?" Leon shook his head and let out a heavy sigh. "You were right, chef," he confessed. "I did manage to get a hold of your secret gumbo recipe, and I stayed up all night trying to memorize it. But I obviously failed." Leon looked at the floor. "I'm very sorry." Leon explained that when he came down, all he heard was about Tiana's gumbo. Since he had never cooked gumbo before, he snuck into her kitchen and found her secret recipe book. When he visited her restaurant one day, Tiana listened to Leon's story. She thought it over for a moment. Leon really did look sorry. I have an idea, she said. I will teach you how to make a basic gumbo. Then you can add some twists to make it your own. In return, you will tell everyone that you borrowed my recipe. Leon smiled and shook Tiana's hand. You've got yourself a deal, he replied, but I have one more favor to ask. Could I have a bowl of your gumbo? Tiana laughed. One bowl of Tiana's top secret gumbo coming right up, she said. That's it. If you want us to read more stories, we have plenty of stories. And they all have multiple stories inside of all these stories. So if you want us to read more stories, just tell us. This was a really long video, but I hope you enjoyed. Oh, and like and subscribe. And you're just going.
What?
Anyways, and if you ever feel like you just want someone to read a story to you, and you don't want to actually read the story, you want to fall asleep to the story, you can just get some, like, this is for kids. This is a kids channel. So yeah, this is like for kids and stuff. So if you ever need like a story read to you, but no one's listening to you no one's like agreeing to you reading to wanting you to English. No one is saying that they'll read a story to you. Then you just search up our channel and we will read a story to you and comment down more stories, and we will say if we have that story. If we do, we will read it to you. Bye, guys.